Hello and welcome to Power to the People with me, Graeme Pryce. Where is all the anger? The world seems to be a very disconnected and illogical place at the moment, doesn't it? Those of us who expect life to follow a logical course, who believe that reactions should be fueled by relevant actions and that things should happen for good reason, seem to be very few and far between. Thankfully, there are still a few of us. You keep thinking that the latest lamentable bullshit will galvanise the decent and the sensible into action. Or at least some grown-up will finally stand up and say enough is enough somewhere. There's something said in one of my favourite Pink Floyd songs that comes to mind these days. The rusty wire that holds the cork that keeps the anger in. Roger Waters mentions in a song about nuclear war, strangely enough. I could be wrong, but I don't think we're on the verge of nuclear annihilation just yet. That rusty wire is definitely broken though, and the cork is about to pop. You can only live in a world where sandwiches are woke and sleep is for betas, and the daughters of Pakistani immigrants are saying that multiculturalism has failed despite being the Home Secretary, and where everybody with an IQ lower than 75 thinks Nigel Farage is going to be the next Prime Minister for so long. Black isn't white, despite how many times GBBs say it is. And up isn't down just because it says so on the front of the Daily Mail. This is only going to be a short one. I just want to share a few thoughts with you, and I will do so right after this. Hey, sorry to interrupt, just a quick interjection. The best way to help the channel and beat the algorithms is to hit the like button, leave a comment when we're done, and subscribe if you haven't already. If you really want to help the channel, then hit the join button below or make a donation through PayPal or buy me a coffee. The links are in the description box. It's all very much appreciated indeed. Thank you. Let's just take America for example. That's a land of extremes, isn't it? Millions of people just voted for a man who spent months, years, using the word tariffs while clearly not really understanding what that word actually means. Now that's one serious disconnect between a man that will hold the keys to the most powerful military arsenal in the world in a couple of weeks and reality, isn't it? He ran a whole campaign based on buzzwords and insults, and nobody stood at the side of that stage and looked at the screaming orange Trumpanzee and thought, he doesn't even know what tariffs are. He's just seen the effect that word has on the voters and he's decided to keep saying it. We better stop him. Nobody thought that. No, what they did instead was look away from the psychopathic lunatic blathering on the stage and look at the cheering idiots with MAGA hats on in the crowd, and they thought, yeah, we're going to get the swankiest jobs in the White House and stick it to the libs. Complete, utter disconnect from reality. Millions of people cheering about something they don't comprehend on even a basic and fundamental level, because a man that they clearly don't know enough about said a word that he doesn't even understand. Complete disconnect from a world where logical decisions and rational reasoning dictate the paths we take. We currently live in a country where a horrifically slim majority forced a blatantly damaging decision on all of us in 2016 because some rich liars wanted to avoid paying tax. They were convinced by rhetoric and populist nonsense about immigration and somehow gaslit into believing that leaving the EU would result in less brown faces in the UK, despite Europe being probably the whitest continent in the world. Despite spending years watching their detrimental and damaging decision leading to us being the only country in the world to ever place economic sanctions upon itself, if you dare suggest, reversing even a tiny bit of Brexit, then you're called undemocratic, a Ramona. We won. Get over it. That was the retort that echoed across the right-wing hills of the land for years, wasn't it? You have to accept the will of the people. Those same people are now screaming and crying because they lost an election in July and demanding a rerun. Suddenly wanting to keep rerunning a campaign until you get the result you want isn't woke or undemocratic or far left anymore. And instead of the country being told that these people need to sit down and shut the fuck up because they've had their go and utterly destroyed the nation for 14 years, they're being taken seriously by the media and even got a mention during PMQs. Utter disconnection from reality there. You've got a couple of million people out there that are convinced that Tommy Robinson is a lovely, honest, caring patriot of a man. We've got a few million more who've been fooled into believing that Nigel Farage is going to be the next Churchill. You can find thousands and thousands and thousands of people on social media defending fascism, despite not even knowing who Heinrich Himmler is and thinking Hitler was a character just made up for old war films. You've got millions of Americans calling each other Marxists, despite having absolutely zero understanding whatsoever of what the word Marxism means, and not even knowing who Karl Marx is. You don't have to look very hard for people who have devoted whole channels to trying to convince us that Putin is the victim and Vladimir Zelensky is a Nazi, despite him being very publicly Jewish. Millions of people just live in this utter disconnection from reality. The one unifying thing that you can always count on in British people is the NHS. We all love the NHS. Well, Nigel doesn't. Nigel has publicly and repeatedly said over the years that he doesn't believe in the NHS and we should be moving towards an Americanised system of national healthcare insurance instead of a national health service. And there it is. That one last strand of reason that you can use to cast a line and pull some of these people back into sanity and reality. You see some twat spangle on Twitter basking in the glory of the sun that shines from the clammy cleft of Nigel's arse, and you go for it. You tell them Nigel wants to destroy the NHS. Nigel wants to take it away from you, and you even provide a link showing him saying so clearly on one of his many, many appearances on Question Time. You think, that'll do it. That'll convince them that Nigel Farage is a dickhead. And you wait, and 5 minutes later, you get a reply that says, well, maybe Nigel has a point. And 5 minutes later, you get another one from somebody else that says, well, if Nigel is saying it, there must be some truth in it. Then a few bots who have algorithms designed to detect when people use the word reform or Farage or Tice come along, and they just post things like vote reform and a Union Jack emoji, 20 times or something. And then eventually someone else comes along and leaves a foul-mouthed, disgusting stream of expletives and something about the left hating Britain. Within a few hours, you're getting things like Nigel 4 PM, Trump 2024, screw the Dems, fuck the libs, America. And you sit there and you look at it all and you think, fuck me, we really have lost all connection with reality, haven't we? Thank you for watching if you've gotten this far. This was just a bit of a rant, but if I have to make a point and justify the title, then the best way is to tell you what made me write this video. I was reading about the case of Luigi Mangione, who is an American guy who seems to have snapped and lost his mind and shot the CEO of a giant US healthcare insurance company. I won't go into it, but it's not necessarily the clear-cut case of an ill and bankrupt man standing up to the cruel injustice of the system as much as we'd probably like it to be. But it does get people talking about how utterly ludicrous the US healthcare system is, and it's not about to get any better with Trump in office. There was recently a case of a man who was hit by an ambulance and injured badly enough to be hospitalised. When he had recovered and was ready to leave the hospital, credit card in hand as is the American way, he was given an itemised bill, and among the charges was $1,800. for being transported to hospital in an ambulance. In the ambulance that had knocked him over, in fact. It's hard to even know what to say about that, isn't it? I think if you force people to live in a world of total confusion and disconnection from reality, then you will start to see more and more extremist events. We very nearly saw a presidential candidate shot in the face live on television a few months ago. 2 inches to the right and we'd be living in a very different future. The anger is there. It's leading to people pulling triggers in America and setting fire to hotels in the UK. We really do live in interesting times, don't we? If you want to help the channel out, the links for everything are lurking below in the descriptions as always, and the join button for memberships is down there as well. Just hitting the like and subscribe and ringing the notification bell is a big help though, as always. Now, that isn't all I have to say, but it is as much of what I've got to say as I can bear to say today. Ta-ra. I've blown the socket that I plugged my ring light into, so I've had to plug my ring light into the telly, and to make it work I've had to turn the telly on, and Jamie Oliver is on doing his Christmas meal, and he's decided to do porchetta instead of turkey, and he's standing there dressing about 300 quid's worth of meat, and he's just talking as if just Pauline from Stoke, who gets her stuff out of Asda at Christmas, maybe treats herself to a couple of things from Marks and Spencer's if she's got the money, can do it. Or like I'm going to, I'll be lucky if I can get a turkey crown, and I'll be hoping that cost me less than a tenner from Iceland. What a bell end. Porchetta.